if you want us to get the whole thing with the dog and the peanut butter out, we can cut that out. You know what? Let's just cut it anyway, and then they won't know that we had it in there. Well, welcome to the Co-Founders. We have a new guest today, Anthony Spurgin. Would you like to introduce yourself to the pod?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. My name's Anthony Spurgin. And I was born in Dallas, Texas, and grew up in a suburb of Dallas called Irving. And currently I'm a professional actor, and I do other stuff too. I'm a tour guide for where JFK was assassinated, and work at an escape room. So I try to keep myself busy. I also went to I was raised Catholic. No longer am. I'm now agnostic. And I went to high school I was homeschooled at a homeschool co-op. And a lot of listening to this will probably know what a homeschool co-op is, but we'll go into more of that as we go along. And yeah, I had quite a negative experience during this time when I was going to this co-op, and I'm here to come on here to talk about that with you guys. But thank you
appreciate you coming out.
Of course, and thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the point of this podcast is to give a voice to that kind of stuff, because sometimes it doesn't seem like there's an appropriate forum where it just sounds like complaining.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to ask about the homeschool, the communist homeschool group. I don't want to ask too direct of a question, but was it like kind of a politically active homeschool group where the current social topics that were deemed appropriate were talked, like, I don't know, like was stem cell research something that was talked about a lot?
Yeah,
maybe to add on to that question, just explain a little bit what a co-op is too.
Because exactly.
I was homeschooled as well. I was in homeschool co-op as well. So just explain what that is so people know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, homeschoolers will have varied experiences as to what their educational experience is like. I think that the common or mainstream perception of what homeschooling is like is that you're like by yourself, you're literally at home, and your mom and dad are teaching you things, and that's all there is. And because my mom is a teacher, she's a Montessori school teacher, I had a little bit of that. But for the most part, it was not at our house. There was a community of Catholics in Irving who gravitated toward traditional Catholicism, toward the Latin Mass and all of that. But for the longest time, for me growing up, they did not have their own building. They had to do Mass at the Carmelite nuns, where the nuns were they had like a private chapel. And I remember for a while, when my parents started getting more interested in traditional Catholicism, we'd go there a lot, and it was very, very small, very crowded. And then eventually they got their own building, and that's where we had our homeschool co-op there. So a co-op is basically, it's done like, a basic. It's sort of set up kind of like your basic school structure, depending on how organized the co-op is. But it definitely got more organized as I grew up. My initial experience was like going to different people's houses, So it'd be like a big house, and there'd be like maybe 10 or 15 families there. And, these kinds of Catholics, and all Catholics in general, I guess for sure, but especially the traditionalists, have big families. I came from a family of 4, and we were the small family. So I did have quite a lot of friends because there were all these families with like 7, 8, 9 kids around me. Basically, to sum up what a co-op is, it's an informal gathering of kids that usually the moms organize, that's set up like a school, but usually it's only meet once a week, and they try to give you enough homework so where you're busy the whole week. But I mean, there's no getting around it. You have a lot more free time when you're in a homeschool co-op than most kids do. I think in and of itself, homeschooling can be pretty positive and good if it's done the right way. But unfortunately for me, my experience of my educational experience at this co-op was tied in, wrapped around a lot of really toxic, really harmful religious beliefs and practices.
With regard to those practices and beliefs, whatever I experienced was always more of a community toxicity almost, where you're not being a part of the group, and it's not even so much an esoteric kind of like, oh, this is what Catholics believe. It's like, oh, well, this is what we're doing right here in this parish, and you're not being a part of it. Is that kind of a similar dynamic to what that was, or was it more of a focus on the general principles of Catholicism?
Well, the environment was it definitely got to be the outside world is bad. So I would say that the emphasis was, sorry, could you say your question again, just because I was a little confused?
Yeah, it's a confusing question. I'm not a simple person.
No, it's okay. Me neither.
So like a lot of times what these groups will have is an insular kind of almost infighting where this person is conflicting with this person, and there are like different competing wills where it doesn't matter what group you are. You could be Mormon, you could be atheist, you could be Catholic. You're going to have these kind of interpersonal conflicts. Was it like that, or was it more of a kind of like, oh, we're trying to just be Catholic?
Well, no,
you're too liberal, or whatever?
It was kind of both of that in a way. I would say they definitely were very. The emphasis was the political viewpoint of everyone there was very much conservative, very hard right, far right. There was also a lot of infighting for sure. A lot of and that's the thing about the traditional Catholic world, is that there's constantly drama. There's constantly there's never really it's never really peaceful, the environment, the atmosphere, because they're constantly getting themselves worked up about what is going on in the Vatican. And of course there's divisions, there's subgroups within the traditional Catholic world. There's the Fraternity of St. Peter, where I was at, that is officially recognized by the church, whereas there's also the Society of Pius X, which is not. It's not, and there's even subgroups within that called the Sedevacantists, which are almost, you could say, basically their own religion, because they don't think Francis is even the Pope.
Cheers to that.
Mel Gibson's actually a Sedevacantist.
Right, he is.
Yeah.
He is.
He doesn't think that Francis is the legitimate Pope, and there was another traditionalist priest that was named James Altman, that's been lionized in that community, and he became a Sedevacantist recently.
Oh, really?
So very oftentimes, very oftentimes the people who in that world get led towards Sedevacantism eventually. It's kind of a slippery slope. Not everyone, but a lot of people do get there, where you just get more into studying how bad they think Vatican II was, and they're on this kind of moral crusade to undo Vatican II basically, and that creates a very toxic environment.
Can I jump in here? I liked what you said about the fortress mentality.
This is James in post-production. Father Frederick isn't having an auditory hallucination. Anthony did mention fortress mentality earlier. However, that audio was corrupted and I couldn't use it, so it's cut. We pay for this software.
Right, and that kind of, we have to build these walls that protect us from the outside. And every time I've seen that, in all the discussions we've had here, the fortress mentality is it hurts a lot of people in the end. When you have that sort of, and our shared experience, James Spencer and I, we had that too, kind of fortress mentality where it's like protect from the outside. And then what ends up happening, what I always see too, and I'd like to see if you think it's the same with your experience, people who have the fortress mentality try to one-up each other in having a higher wall, if you know what I mean. Like they and that's where I think the infighting that you're talking about starts to happen. They try to be more traditionalist than the next guy, and it's just kind of this battle. Does that seem right to you? Is that kind of how your experience was?
Absolutely. It's like the epitome of holier than thou. It's like,
or virtue signaling.
Or virtue signaling. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they're all about. I mean, they obviously would not agree with that. They would preach about, humility and preach about, but it's just a classic case of, people of saying all these things, but their behavior clearly does not match up with what they say.
But yeah, I think the fortress mentality is kind of almost a default in American psychiatric. What's the word? Someone help
psychiatric.
me. Yeah.
Psychiatry?
The American psyche. Like just to have your own land, have a fence, have your guns. If anyone knocks on your door, they're probably with the IRS, so you shoot them. Like, I don't know. It kind of seems like that's where the extremism always goes, where they just want to have a ranch far away from everyone.
Yeah.
They want guns, and they'll make it like, come and take them is like the motto.
There's something that's very common in the tradcath world called homesteading, where I'm pretty sure very few of them actually practice this, but you do see it there's a lot of things in the tradcath world that they talk about how great it is, but very few of them actually do it. And homesteading is basically like setting up you have to live rurally to do it. You have to kind of have a farm, but being as little as least dependent on the outside world as possible. So they like grow their own food and basically try to set up within their own ranch or farm or wherever they live, try to set up their own kind of commune or colony. Obviously, that's very hard work. It's a full-time job. You have to completely dedicate yourselves to that. So very few of them actually do it, but a lot of them talk about, they're constantly sort of like in the mindset of, the outside world is evil and bad, and that's why I call traditional Catholicism a cult. That's a very loaded term. I definitely do not call the Catholic Church a cult, but there's lots of various subgroups in the Catholic Church, including traditional Catholics. I would just say, as a whole, basically, who are very cult-like, because every cult has to make the outside world seem awful.
Right.
Yes, to make you want to ensconce yourself within their safe walls that they're building up.
Yeah, or it's like, you wake up in the bunker and the guy's telling you, no, you can't go outside, don't open that door.
Yeah.
It's really bad out there. There are people that will rip your face off. I don't know. I think it's a scary thing when people have that kind of psychological flexibility or impressionability to just listen to that and hear that from someone who they respect and say, oh, I should be afraid of these people because they're going to come in and they're going to take my food, they're going to take my property, they're going to take something. But getting into your own experience, what do you think was the main contention that you had with that culture or lifestyle? What was it about it specifically that gave you the most ick?
Well, it's a lot more deep and serious and profound than just ick. For me, basically, right now in my life, this is an ongoing thing that I struggle with all the time. Basically, is my relationships, my dating life. Because basically, my sexual identity was pulverized. And I'll go into details about why that was. They have a very, very intense, I would say like schizophrenic viewpoint on human sexuality. And I started going to this co-op at Mater Dei, which was the name of the church, the parish where the co-op was, and the co-op was called Our Lady of Fatima, which in the traditional world they're really into Our Lady of Fatima. They spend a lot of time talking about like the secrets and the prophecies and all of that. They spend so much time talking about that. But anyway, as I'm turning 14, when I'm starting to have my, like all kids that age start to have their sexual awakenings around then, this training started. This training to sort of like completely repress any sexual thought any sexual urge, any desire whatsoever, to just completely push it down. And it was strange because I actually got a contradictory message from another priest there who would tell me to not be scrupulous. He would say things like, if I tell you not to think about grizzly bears, what are you going to think of? And I said, grizzly bears. And he's like, exactly. So you can't, but that priest was named Father Langlois. And later on, he got laicized because he had an affair with a married woman. And I didn't.
Which, to me, is like the least offensive thing that a priest can do.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. But I did not have a lot of experience with him. I was mainly under the care and instruction of Father Phil Wolf, FSSP, who is still technically a priest, but he's been suspended for reasons I'm not exactly clear about. But basically, from what I understand, from what I know, he can't say mass, he can't hear confessions. He's on like a potential permanent timeout to exercise his faculties. But anyway,
probably nothing.
Yeah, probably nothing. But anyway, in confession with Wolf, I was raked over the coals for my sexual thoughts. I would say I would try to be as vague as possible, and I'd be like, so I thought about bikinis one day, and I looked on something online and stuff, and I would say these things, and I would try to keep it vague at first, but he would press me for details. He'd be like, when? How many times? What exactly did you look at? Tell me more. And he would give me different instructions as to how to expunge sexual thoughts from my head, including to physically hurt myself. One thing he instructed me to do, and there's recordings of him saying this online. He loved to have his sermons recorded and posted on a specific channel on YouTube, and so you can find those online. I can send to you guys if anyone's interested.
Yeah, send it to us after, please.
Yes,
for research.
I will. But one thing he told me to do was to kneel on my fingers to expel if a sexual thought was arising in my head, to basically put my fingers on the floor and to kneel on them while I'm saying Hail Marys, which was very painful. And I was taking guitar at the time, and
Ooh. So you had calluses and stuff.
Well, your fingers hurt a little bit when you're pushing down the strings, and I had to stop. I to this day I can't play guitar because I stopped lessons, because while I was doing these things at the same time I was taking these lessons, so the pain. I'm very sensitive to finger pain now. Anytime my fingers are hurt in any way, it's kind of traumatic, because my mind goes back to that time, because and of course going to the public pool, I'm constantly trying to look away at all the girls in bikinis, and my ability to relate to a girl in any way, sexually, romantically, to this day is very, very difficult and hard, because of the training done to me to associate physical pain with these things. And so and I also, so that's a major thing for me. This is it's sexual abuse. It deeply damaged me and continues to. Mm-hmm. And I've had another thing was, I've had issues since the day I was born, I think, with anxiety and depression, and of course the struggles I was having of wrestling and fighting with these sexual thoughts. It was driving me kind of crazy, and Wolf discouraged me from getting professional mental health treatment. He told me that they would just encourage my sin, so I just stewed in this pain. He didn't want me to go see a therapist, go see a psychiatrist. He told me not to do that. And so everyone there, and even the fraternity of St. Peter now, recognizes he was a bad dude. I wish they would just, I've been in communication with them recently to try and get them to just full on laicize him, and they won't do it for some reason. They're keeping him suspended. I highly doubt he'll ever be put in ministry again, but that's kind of not good enough for me. I want him just like spit out, and I'm still very upset with them that they haven't done that. But
Guy, can I jump in here, Anthony? That's just awful. I'm so sorry that you went through that, and that's
thank you.
That's not at all. I mean, he did everything wrong. Like I was just as I was hearing all those things, it's not how you do it. He did everything wrong. Confession, you're not supposed to do that. You let the person's conscience come forward as it comes forward. And so, sometimes you may have to ask a question if you really didn't understand what he was saying, but that's it. It's nothing more than that. You don't try and dig, and then not discouraging you from getting professional help psychologically. That's also just terrible. And
well, it's almost
really
criminal to
you
me.
went through that. Yeah. I'm really sorry that you went through that.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I've gotten that message from pretty much every Catholic I've told this story to has said the same thing. And so I definitely understand that everyone seems to agree that he was that was wrong of him, and he's a bad guy. But I still struggle with the fact that at the time he was lionized. At the time everyone loved him, and he was doing and he was saying these things openly. That toxic instructions, information he was saying from the pulpit. So
right.
Yeah, the fact that at the time nobody around me did more still really upsets me, obviously. But at the same time, I do appreciate that now everyone recognizes what was up. I appreciate that.
Has anyone close to you ever said like, "Hey, we kind of wish that we had been more supportive of you during that time"?
Absolutely. And I want to say that I still have, my parents have apologized to me, and I have a good relationship with them still to this day, which I'm very grateful for. I went to also the woman who ran the co-op and had a conversation with her, and I've forgiven her, and she was sorry as well. And so I don't have any anger in my heart for those people anymore. But obviously, like I just said, I'm still frustrated about this, how the situation was not seen. And I do also think that the problem is far more than just him. There's intrinsic in the trad cath world. There's definitely a culture and an atmosphere where that kind of behavior is seen as good.
And I think the most grievous thing to me that you mentioned is that he would specifically tell you not to get psychiatric help. I think that's so. Yeah. I just have to ask: do you have a therapist now?
Oh yeah, I've definitely see a therapist every week. And I've at various times I've been on medication and off of it, and so I'm definitely in a much better place now. But your mind is very vulnerable and malleable in those years, and so it's a lot. It's a lot to go through and to unravel. It's still a process for me that could have, had I gotten professional help then, I almost certainly would not be in the same situation I am now.
Do you find in your relationships now, like you said, you have trouble? I think Spencer and I can relate to that. Yeah. Father Frederick he's never had a relationship, so he's really doesn't. He's really bad.
Mine are just different kind of relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean, you know what kind of relationship I mean. Yes. But like I don't want to speak for Spencer, but for me, a lot of it is people pleasing, because I was always taught that it was like shameful to even want physical contact, or like to even think about it is unholy, so you don't even ask for it, and just everything you do is for another person. I don't know if that's what kind of impressed on you. I don't know what your own struggles are with it.
I mean, my struggles have been like, since high school, I've not been in a relationship that's lasted more than 2 weeks, and I mean, there's other factors involved, of course, but because of this training, I still have, like, there have been multiple instances where I'm with a girl and we're ready to, go all the way, and I physically can't. I just physically can't express affection. It's very hard for me to express affection, to express love, because these the association with pain arises, and I'll pull back. I'll have a reaction of a fearful reaction. And any hardcore traditionalist, if they're hearing me say that, they would love that, because they would think that that this priest successfully made me chaste against my will, and ingrained these. So they would be enthusiastic about that I'm in that state, and Wolf even said that. I think he had this was kind of his intention. Wolf said at one point, it's better for you to be lonely and saved, than you're lonely, so what is kind of the attitude, and I'd rather you be lonely than fornicate, is the mindset that they have. And so without going into too much explicit detail, it's not that I've had no experience with this. I definitely have, but it's been I'm not a virgin or anything, but it's still like a relationship that's meaningful and that lasts. I've not been able to get yet.
Relatable, man. I relate to that a lot.
Like, how do you explain to someone on the first date, oh, hey, by the way, I'm very bad at this?
Yeah.
I want to say that so many times, and I don't, and I think I should. I think I should open with that. Hey, by the way, I'm very bad at this.
But, how do you say that and not scare off the person? That's
exactly.
Yeah.
Because it is a scary thing. If a man says that, it's like, well, is he gonna murder me? Is he insane? Is he gonna assault me? And like the last step is, oh no, actually I have things that I'm trying to work through that I can't.
Yeah, no, it's a trauma response, exactly. And I do think culturally we're getting a lot better at understanding these issues and recognizing these things, and I'm really, really happy about that. But there's a lot more work to be done that needs to be done in raising awareness and letting people know these things, these issues.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes it's really hard for people to understand what you're talking about unless they've gone through it themselves, or maybe just has studied it and learned about it, right? And that's part of the reason we do this podcast, is to get people to have an awareness of what can happen, and so they can understand later on how to deal with that person and help that person. And then just sharing these things is extremely helpful too, to everyone who's been through anything.
Well, thank you. Yeah, exactly. And I want to make it clear here that the mainstream, and I did have some experiences at what they would call Novus Ordo parishes, mainstream Catholic churches. It's not like that where they. I mean, I have there's a reason I'm not Catholic. I have issues with the teachings of the actual teachings of the church, for sure. But I can definitely say that the atmosphere, the environment is not nearly as oppressive as, controlling of your thoughts. It's they're better than that, especially after Vatican II. I think Vatican II is a very, very positive thing that the church did. And of course, to them, it was the worst thing that's ever happened in the church.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Look who it really pisses off in the Catholic Church. Like, that's all you have to look at. It's I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of them are borderline white supremacist.
There was definitely,
not openly.
There were definitely pro-Confederates that I encountered there, for sure. And they have a way to explain how you can be pro-Confederate and not racist. But
it's really cool.
What is that argument?
Well, it's basically like, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. That old line. Yeah, it was about states' rights.
It wasn't about slavery, but we should redo that whole thing about slavery. That's the only part we're really interested in. The whole states' rights thing, we really don't care about that, as long as we all get slavery.
And they were also, if I could go on about revisionist history there.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Crusades were awesome, according to them. According to them, of course.
The Inquisition wasn't
that bad. The Inquisition wasn't that bad.
Or the Inquisitions, they were fine.
Yeah, and also the church was right with Galileo.
Yeah.
There is a geocentrist strain at
Oh my gosh.
among traditional Catholics. That I remember when they were promoting this movie called The Principle, which was there was a poster at one point for The Principle on the bulletin board of the church there.
I'm gonna write that down. We have to watch it as a podcast. That's such a it's such a piece of. I'm sorry, I won't say it.
You're right.
Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah.
Continue.
Could I take a quick? You guys can edit this, right? Can I take a bathroom break?
Well, Spencer wants to change. No. Spencer wants to change it up, and
no.
I want to go with him too for a second.
I loved your comments about Fatima, so I just wanted to hear like any of your favorite Fatima references that you heard.
Well, that's funny because they really, whenever they would talk about it, they would really start to sound. And of course, I didn't really have a point of reference for this at the time, but they would really start to sound like Alex Jones. They would really have really sounded hardcore conspiracy because it's for most people listening will know about this, but for those who don't know, in Portugal in 1914, I think it was, there was a story of the Virgin Mary appearing to these 3 children. Who were like shepherds, and they were not.
Who were definitely not high on barbiturates.
Who were never not high on barbiturates, and and they were not educated and everything, and they claimed that the Virgin Mary appeared to them, and said she's upset about how sinful the world is, and that she was going to. She had like 3 secrets that she was going to give them, and apparently the 3rd secret was revealed in 2000, but a lot of the traditional Catholics don't believe it, and they think that it's still being hidden or whatever. And then the Virgin Mary claimed that she would perform a miracle that supposedly happened when all these people gathered at Fatima and looked in the sky and claimed that they saw the sun dancing, moving around.
Dancing.
Yeah, or
which is pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool.
I've done it too.
Yeah, I've done it too. Yeah, you
stare at the sun.
Yeah,
it starts dancing.
That's a big
so stupid.
Yeah, I mean a key feature here, but yeah, I mean go ahead. Yeah, I guess I agree basically, but as far as I know, the church they said that you could that it's worthy of belief or something like that, but that you don't have to believe it at the same time. It's something it's like it's okay if you believe it or don't kind of thing. But I mean, I was very much under the impression while I was there that it was almost to question it was tantamount to a sin. It was just, I mean, the co-op was named after her. It was just completely accepted without question by everyone there. And there's stuff about Russia in it, in the supposed secret, and that again, it's very Alex Jones conspiracy theory kind of, because there's a whole conspiracy about the Vatican hiding the secret, the 3rd one, not wanting it to get out to the world, and so there's all this speculation about what's actually in it, and there's speculation that it's like a warning it's like a warning about Vatican II or something. And it's very apocalyptic, the whole vibe and attitude of it. It's very much tied in with an expectation of whatever's in the 3rd secret has something to do with like the imminent apocalypse or something like that, and that the miracle of the sun was supposed to be, because apparently the people watching it thought the world was ending. It's like a portent or a sign of the impending apocalypse. And that's another thing they do a lot in the traditional Catholic world. They have something called types, which is where they'll say that a type is like an event or person that is real, but is meant to foreshadow a future event.
Right.
Yeah. And so,
okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So-
Interesting. I've
Yeah,
never heard
like,
of this.
so-
I forgot about this.
for
This is
example,
deep lore.
yeah, it's very deep lore, and there's so much lore in the Tradcath world.
No, I'm
so many,
serious. It
so
really
much
is. It
stories.
gets so crazy.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure they said Obama was a type of the Antichrist at the time,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yeah.
and
I remember that.
Wolf, the trad priest who abused me, he would say things like, "Don't even look at Obama because you might get possessed." I could go on a whole nother rabbit hole about what they said about demons and stuff, and
We're all possessed.
yeah, we're all possessed. Yeah, demons are literally everywhere to them, like in your food. They always encourage you to like.
Food.
Well, yeah, food and drink. Wolf would always say, "Do this over your food and drink to exorcise any demons that might be in the." Yeah.
Oh.
And then you get a parasite and die.
Yeah. and they would describe these demonic encounters like they saw them. Like they would say things like, "I was at an exorcist and I saw this guy. His eyes turned red and and his voice changed and he started climbing up the wall and he started floating." And I'm not making this up. One time he said that a demon, an exorcist asked a possessed person, asked the demon inside him, "How did you possess this person? Where did you come from?" And the demon said, "Harry Potter." That is, I'm not lying. That was
That's
side.
amazing.
And here there's a question. Yeah. There's a question you can ask. Where's the video? Where's the video evidence of all these things
allowed.
happen? Yeah, because they
allowed.
would say it's not allowed because it's a violation of privacy of the person who's being possessed or whatever. And here's what I would say to that.
So we're going to talk about the possession, but we're not going to
Yeah.
show it.
What devout person who got possessed by a demon, if a video of this supposed supernatural encounter were made public, it would end the debate. It would end the discussion. And of course, there's the argument. Well, what about AI? What about deepfakes? You can do that, and it's like, you can verify this stuff.
Sure.
You can verify these things. And if what they were saying is true, and there were video of it, you would be able to verify it through experts. So I have no other conclusion but to think they're all just lying through their teeth in order to perpetuate this this aura of how like the outside world is just crawling with demons everywhere you look. Again, the fortress mentality, where protect yourself from the demons in the outside world and all that. Yeah,
It's kind of funny that like once you become a non-believer, your chances of being possessed are about zero.
yeah.
So I think that's the best defense to being.
Well, they have an
to
excuse.
not being
They have an
possessed.
excuse for that. They have an excuse
Oh, it's
where
'cause we're already lost.
yeah,
right?
you're a non-believer already. Why do the devils need to bother with you? Yeah, exactly. That's their they're out. There's always a sneaky way out that they have, or what you could call a thought-stopping cliche, a sentence-long answer or statement that just shuts down thoughts, so where it's like a gotcha to them.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing in cult-like groups. They always have those one-liners that just kind of stop questions, right? And so, and when you're young, you what are you going to do with that, right? You're just going to go along with that. And that's actually how you should learn when you're young. You learn with short phrases, and that's how you learn things. So yeah, it's just they can really control the youth sometimes with this stuff, and it's just awful when it,
There was one movie about possession that I watched at the Legionary's house in Thornwood after I left the Legion, and I'm not going to name the name of the priest who said this, but to this day I cry when I think about it. It was the most ridiculous demon possession story I've ever seen, and it was like this girl was in college, and then all of a sudden she got started getting like she got attacked while she was just in bed, and it's like, why would she get can the devil do that? Can he just attack you if he, and then whatever. Anyway, so she keeps getting possessed or whatever, and then by the end of it, it was like I was just trying not to laugh. And I'm still Catholic at the time, and I'm like, this is so silly. Who really believes this? And we're leaving the auditorium, and I was to the priest. I'm like, hey, Father, that was a pretty crazy movie, right? And I was saying it almost in jest, almost laughing. And he was like, yeah, it's based on a true story. And I was like,
Yeah.
I just
Is that movie
up and was like, I don't remember the name of it.
Was it The Exorcism
don't-
of Emily Rose?
Maybe no. It wasn't the right. Ooh.
It could be the original Exorcist. I don't know. Is it the?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like Hollywoodish. It was more like. It wasn't grotesque.
Oh, you know what I think it was? I think it was the Rite.
That's a good movie.
That was the
Anthony
one.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Or The Omen.
Yeah,
It wasn't a good movie though.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good movie. Okay. I don't even think it didn't seem like a high.
So many Exorcist films.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep
and it
track
wasn't.
of.
It wasn't an Exorcist film, by the way. It wasn't like the name Exorcist. I just forgot.
Was
the
it
name
one of the
actual-
Conjuring films? Conjuring, maybe.
No, it wasn't. It
I
wasn't a
love
good
The
movie.
Conjuring.
It wasn't a good movie.
Yeah.
Those are good movies. Yeah,
was-
If I
It
could
wasn't
say,
worth watching.
If I could say something about The Exorcism of Emily Rose, that is also based on a true story. I don't know if it was the movie you saw or not, but that's based on Anneliese Michel, who was a German girl, and in the 70s, she was having a mental health crisis. She was like a schizophrenic, I believe, and her behavior was interpreted by her family as demonic possession, and she had 67 exorcisms done on her. I think within like a period of just a few days, and she died of malnutrition because they weren't feeding her or giving her, or they were just kept on doing the exorcisms over and over as a way to solve her mental health crisis, and she ended up dying of malnutrition. And there was a court case, but pretty much all the tradcasts just believed that she was actually possessed, and it ended up they made Exorcism of Emily Rose. They changed the names and everything, but the story is basically what happened with Anneliese Michel, as if she were really possessed. And it was directed by Scott Derrickson, who made the Doctor Strange movie, the first Doctor Strange. Yeah, and I think he's Catholic. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so like now with exorcisms, whenever they are done, whether you believe them or not, the common practice now of the Catholic Church is to make sure that there are psychologists and doctors on board with the process, because every problem needs to have its own solution. So now there's always a great effort to make sure. In the case of Emily Rose, what was her real name?
Anneliese Michel.
Right. That was done wrong, completely wrong. They should have had doctors on board with it as well. Also making sure that it's not a psychological thing as well before you go on to do these other things, right? So, yeah, that's something I think the church has learned.
And I think it should be like a pretty thorough psychological evaluation before you.
Absolutely.
Let's check every box before we say demons. So before it was just like it seems like before it was just obviously people who were mentally ill who were being goaded into like they were tricked into thinking that they were possessed.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's whenever I hear the stories, I'm like, that just sounds like you're teasing someone who has mental problems.
Yeah.
Like you could do that to a homeless person. You could convince a homeless person, most people downtown New York City, that they're possessed if you just keep talking to them enough.
And again, if you could prove these supernatural claims of the possessed person doing things that are impossible, that would, like, if you could prove it with video evidence, that would shut down the argument. That would prove them right. But they don't want to do that, and that's a little suspicious.
Yeah, I think we should offer our services to the Catholic Church, agnostic exorcists. So we'll go in there and we'll be like, I don't even think you're really possessed.
Yeah.
Let's just try it out. Let's see. And then like they start coming at you in Latin. You're like, that's not the right declension.
Yeah.
You don't know Latin. Like, it's like I feel like it'd be like, oh, you heard that, like
Yeah.
when you introduce you to my fiance, like that's not even Latin. That's French.
Agnostic exorcist, yeah. We need to
Au
figure out how to do
contraire.
that, yeah.
The demon that's speaking French.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry,
Well, I mean, it gives them authority, because if you convince people that there's this huge problem of demons everywhere, and we're the only people that can solve that problem, and it's argument through fear, and this actually goes to a broader issue that I can talk about here. That's definitely pervasive in the trad Catholic world, is that you are constantly being threatened. It's a cliche now, the fire and brimstone preacher, but that is what it's like. You know, they're talking about hell constantly. They're constantly trying to terrify you. It's like it's like spirituality through haunted house. It's like the constant, you know, talking about hell, bringing up, you know, stories of different saints who claimed that they had that claimed that they had visions of people from hell. And here's the other thing about saints. Correct me if I'm wrong. All it means to be a saint is that you're definitely in heaven. That's all it means.
Yes.
It's no endorsement of everything you did or said when you were alive, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, but the Tradcaths will take things that the saints did or said and go like, what? You're going to question a saint? Who are you to question? Like, a saint said this. And saints who would...
It's like, well...
Yeah, go ahead.
You're just not... I'm like, I would just say I'm not a saint yet because I'm not dead.
Yeah. I'm not saying that
I'm
you're
a saint.
not dead. Yeah, exactly.
I'm already a saint. I'm going to heaven.
Yeah, exactly. And so...
and then curse at them.
Any saint who was, I'll be honest, kind of crazy and said crazy stuff. And of course, you know, St. Francis used to do things like roll around naked in the snow.
Yeah,
and stuff.
St. Francis is, for me, is like, my goodness. There's some things. If he did that today, I don't know.
No, I don't know. Rolling around naked in the snow. That's like a what's it called?
Throw yourself in rose bushes. That was him too.
Yeah.
Performative art.
Yeah,
performative art. That's like
performance
art.
Matthew
Silver thing.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like David Blaine.
I really.
Yeah.
No, really. It's like I think he was like the Eric Andre of his time. Maybe.
Yeah.
Like, why not? He was goofy. He was a little bit silly. He was like, I'm going to talk to the fish or whatever. I don't know what he said.
That would be an amazing show.
Is that the same one?
You're playing St. Francis, but you're like hosting an Eric Andre type show.
I just saw him in Houston. Like,
did you know though that David Blaine, all the stuff he does, he was actually inspired by saints of the early church who would do things.
Crazy.
So
yeah,
there was saints who were called the Pillar Fathers, and they would literally stand on pillars in the middle of a town and not leave it. And people would give them food and go. So David Blaine was actually inspired by these people.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going
to do what he does. Yeah.
It seems.
I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it definitely seems as though a lot of saints of the early church, especially, were like, "Hey, I'll just beat the crap out of myself or hurt myself a lot physically, and that will translate into spiritual brownie points." And that mindset was, you know, brought onto me because I can't remember what saint it was, but the kneeling on the fingers thing definitely comes from a saint. So Wolf was not really an original guy. He would say that often as a defense. You know, he would say things like, "If this sounds hard, what I'm saying, I'm not making this up. This is coming from God." He would shield himself all the time by saying, "I'm just getting this from God." Well, he's not getting it from God. He's getting it from men who the church said there are in heaven, but have not said that everything they did or said is good or noble, and they just run with that, you know. And so, well, if a saint physically hurt himself, why can't I tell a kid to do it? You know, is the mindset they're in there, yeah. And so that's a lot of where this comes from. Why they prescribe these things and why they do these things. They're just learning from example.
Yeah, the kneeling on the fingers thing is the first I hear it, but I've heard other ones like actually using hot oil or wax, and you put that on you.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
I've heard of cutting.
Yeah,
obviously
like,
the
like
beating,
on the
flagellation,
the backs, things like that. That's not good. Like, I think especially after Vatican II, the church doesn't endorse that stuff anymore. It's just not helpful. Yeah.
It seems like to me that's the only time you would think that that's an answer is if you have nothing else to offer in your life, that you're such a bad person internally and externally that you feel like all I can really do is hurt myself.
That's never true. You're never so bad that the only
no,
but I mean, like, I see what you're saying.
These people who like everything to them is disgusting.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a thought about a person. That's terrible. I should only be thinking about God.
Well, they want you to think you're bad. They really in the Tradcath world, they really emphasize how awful humans are. Like we're just so bad. We're so awful, and they just
Protestant.
Yeah, and they just doing that. But at the same time, they're filled with this self-righteousness and this that's how they sustain themselves, amidst all the suffering that they're bringing. And of course they have phrases like penance and offer it up. They say that all the time, that it's their mantra.
That's one of the one-liners I was thinking of. We were talking about those one-liners. That's one. It's like, oh, but that's so hard. Oh, offer it up. It's just like...
And that solves everything. Yeah. When you say offer it up, oh, I'm not traumatized anymore. Thank you. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's...
Yeah, offer it up. Okay, cool. I don't have gallbladder stones anymore. Yeah.
And that's the thing about what's tricky about these one-liners is that there's some truth to it. There's some truth to... Okay, you take on responsibility and you try and take on a burden, something that's difficult to get something greater. Sometimes we have to do that. Athletes have to do that, But then if it's just everything offered up, that's not the answer, right? So that's what's so difficult about these one-liners, is that there's some truth to them. Yeah.
One of my favorite one-liners, with the true thing, is it was no excuses. I remember one person would always tell me no excuses.
Oh,
he would ask me a question.
You're talking about?
Yeah. And then I would give him an answer, and he'd be like, no excuses. I'm like, but you asked me! You asked me why I didn't do this thing. I'm telling you why. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying the garbage didn't get taken out because I was doing this other thing in the kitchen. Like, no excuses. Well, I don't know what to tell you then. Okay, it's because I'm a bad little munchkin.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want? That's exactly what they want, though. They want you to feel bad and be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm a sinner. And I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, Puffer, because it's not someone who's, actually, never mind.
We'll talk later.
We'll talk later.
Off the air.
Off the air. So speaking of off the air, Father Frederick almost has to go, but did you want to say something, Father?
Yeah, I had, so, did you ever have someone in your community that you thought you could kind of talk about, because it doesn't sound like your community had a lot of nuance in what they taught and what they said, but did you have anybody, like a friend or somebody, that you could maybe have more nuanced conversations about these issues with, or were you kind of alone?
Well, I mentioned earlier that Langua, the other priest there, was actually said pretty much the exact opposite things that Wolf said. He was, he was very gentle, and whenever I would go to him, and he was very understanding. But I also, looking back and where he ended up, where he had an affair and got laicized for that, and there was actually a lie spread to the community that he had decided that it was a choice he made, that he didn't want to be a priest anymore, and that he had decided to get married instead, lying to the community, whereas the reality was he had actually gotten caught.
He had an affair before.
Yeah, he had an affair before, and everything. So, but he was, but the thing is that I just he wasn't around as much. And also Wolf's spiritual direction, because it was so intense and because it was so fear oriented, kind of superseded anything Langua said in my mind. So I think that it was I'm very grateful that Langua, I had him to talk to sometimes to sort of be a breath of fresh air. But like both of them were eventually, of course, kicked out by the fraternity, and Langua was completely kicked out, and Wolf is just in timeout, although I wish they would kick him out completely. They were like opposite extremes, and so I just wish, I wasn't being spiritually mentored by extreme people. I wish I was being spiritually mentored by sane people. But I'm still grateful for that. But again, Wolf just had such influence over the environment that aside from Langua, there really wasn't really anyone else to talk to about these problems. And I trusted Wolf. I even when I struggled with what he said, I was still very much in the mindset of, well, he's more right because he's more intense and more like that again. in that world, the currency is intensity, ferociousness, fierceness. And so I internalized that, and I thought, he's more intense, more ferocious, more fierce. He's more right, you know.
Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Shoot.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I also appreciate you, Father, coming on and hearing this. I've said in other podcasts that I don't call priests father. I don't use that moniker anymore but I'm very willing to do it for you, because I really appreciate that you came on here and you listened, and again, I am not, going out there saying that the Catholic Church is a cult, because I think that the mainstream church is, I have issues with the teachings, but the mainstream church now is very much more, seems to be on a mission of inclusivity and peace, and much more so. And I want to recognize that and encourage that. The traditionalists are losing their minds right now with the current synod.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. And
so
that makes me want to say, cheer on Francis and whatever they're doing, So there are a lot of people in the Catholic Church who I respect and encourage to keep doing what they're doing.
Well, thank you for that. Wow.
Well, and where can people find you? I know you have a podcast as well.
I don't have my own podcast yet.
You don't
I have my own
okay,
YouTube channel where I've posted acting-related stuff. So if anyone wants to follow my acting and writing career, because I'm a writer and actor, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Tony. I also go by Tony, so you can find it Tony Spurgin. And if you want to find me on TikTok, I'm Anthony Spurgin 5 on TikTok, and Tony Spurgin TonySpurgin on Instagram.
Okay, and we'll have things in the description of the Spotify,
Great,
or of the episode details.
Great. All right,
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. I'll be right back.
You could pee on the pod if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. Yeah. The whole podcast is from his toilet. Dude, I want to ask him some more Fatima stories too. I want to hear his favorite Fatima story.
That subculture is so wild to me.
It's wild. Dude.
It's crazy. I see some of their stuff on
I'm
Facebook.
so glad I didn't grow up in that.
I know.
Father Frederick, did you grow up in that with the co-op? Was that
no? So we had a co-op, and it was a little bit tratty, but not like him. He's on another level.
Like
yeah, he's on another level.
That's so fun.
There was a compound in Inola that was kind of, I call it a compound because they had like
a compound,
12 houses, and then it was like,
was that the one they were trying to make
adoration.
The perfect Catholic city? And then it like totally.
Maybe.
There was one in Texas. I actually wanted to bring that up, but
this is Oklahoma.
Oh, this is Oklahoma. Okay. There was one in Texas. These people tried to make a Catholic city. Like when he was talking about the homestead,
the Holy Roman Empire revived
exactly.
or something.
It's like Christendom.
Where's Charlemagne?
Yes.
It's Steubenville and Ave.
Let's go bomb some mosques or something. I don't know what their mission would be.
Oh shoot, he's back.
Man.
Stop making fun of him. Oh, he doesn't have his headphones in yet. Hold on, wait until he gets his headphones in, then we can start.
Hell yeah.
Okay, we weren't making fun of you.
Oh, go ahead.
Hell yeah.
Make fun. I'd make fun of me. So.
See, that's
very
a trauma
healthy.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yep.
So where were we?